Hi guys, my name is Rachel Goldstein. This is my final project presentation, an analysis of the case study Improving Visitor Services by Focusing on Operations by Amy Kaufman. So this case study focuses on the new exhibit by the Guggenheim Museum in New York City. It was called The Art of the Motorcycle, and it really was a groundbreaking exhibit because it utilized the entire museum itself, all the space and all the facilities, but it also saw an increase of attendance from 15,000 per week to 24,000 per week. And while that doesn't seem like much of a problem, it did cause a lot of issues for the museum. So because of this increase in attendance, the museum really saw an abundance of overcrowding, long lines, and guests complained about lack of facilities. For example, no restrooms or lack of enough space for restrooms. There also, unfortunately for the Visitor Services Department, they received the bulk of the complaints and the poor reviews because they essentially are the face of the museum. Additionally, there was a clear lack of communication between and within departments of the museum, and this stemmed from the lack of understanding of what the Visitor Services Department really was. The Visitor Services Department stated that they didn't really understand their own roles and responsibilities, and therefore neither did the rest of the departments, which in turn affected the communication between departments and therefore affected the planning of the exhibit itself. So the solution to the issues that arose of this overcrowding was to strengthen the Visitor Services Department itself by better defining the roles and responsibilities of the visitor services. They were able to implement a clearer design and a clear operations for them. And it came about that because visitor services was responsible for the daily operations and functions of the museum, that they were better suited to the operations department and not the marketing department. Additionally, they sought to better interdepartmental communication and also better teamwork and working together between departments. They created operations committees and task forces with the goal of improving not only staff experiences, but guest experiences as well. So I do agree with the solutions that they came up with. I do think that having a better and clearly defined visitor services department was essential for dealing with this issue, especially because for the entire museum to understand what visitor services was, it better created an atmosphere of communication, which better created an understanding of the museum as a whole. And this would in turn create satisfaction for the staff, which if the staff is satisfied and they are understanding and communicating, it provides a better atmosphere for guests themselves. There are many things, though, that should have been done prior, and this goes back to management versus effective leadership. There was no one to come out and say that the Visitor Services Department needed to be clearly defined. And that is the difference between a manager and an effective leader. Is effective leaders bring about change. They set a direction towards that change and bring everyone together towards that goal. And that could have been with the exhibit itself, or the fact that Visitor Services did not have a clearly defined set of roles and responsibilities. So while I agree with their solutions, there's a lot that could have been done prior that would have helped them avoid this issue. So the first thing that I would say should have been done was that Visitor Services needed a clearly defined set of roles and responsibilities. The policies and procedures manual should have been reviewed and revised long before they even got to this exhibition. And they should be revised for every museum at least annually. And they set out roles and responsibilities of every personnel, of every individual, and every department. And there was a clear lack of that in this policies and procedures because nobody understood what the roles of the daily operations of the visitor services department was. If they would have implemented a clear and concise policies and procedures for the visitor services department, they would have initially seen it belonged under operations and not marketing. So that would have been a better start. Next, I think the exhibition planning was a little bit lacking. There were things about the exhibition plan that probably would have, if evaluated better or reviewed better, would have helped them avoid these issues. For example, part of the process of the exhibition plan is to evaluate the design and the actual plan of the new exhibit. This would have been understanding what spaces and facilities were needed for the actual exhibition itself. And to see this, the collection development strategy should have been looked at. This would have guided the exhibition planning to see what space and facilities the museum had and what they had to work with. It would have better helped them design the plan itself. But it also would have given them a little bit more understanding of what new operations and possible additional staff were required to ensure that the exhibit was functioning and operating properly and to the level that they expected it to. And so by reviewing the exhibition plan or having a more concise exhibition plan that reviewed all of the space and facilities or additions that they needed would have helped better prepare for the opening and attendance. That brings me to actual attendance projections. These are things that are reviewed and analyzed on a regular basis for things such as budget, which a budget plan changes and grows as a museum changes and progresses further. So that also means that attendance projections change on a regular basis as well. So by analyzing previous year's attendance and the yearly attendance, also the weekly attendance that the museum experiences, and comparing that to any other exhibits that the museum had previously opened, would have helped prepare the museum and its staff for the skyrocketing attendance that this exhibit achieved. A new exhibit always should have along with it that the attendance is going to increase. They would have better been able to prepare their exhibition plan to see if they had the space and the facilities available to accommodate. They also would have known if the attendance is increasing, do they need more staff to facilitate? Do they need more staff to be present with this skyrocketing increase? So having a better awareness of the attendance projections would have prepared them better for the increase that they had. Additionally, while I do agree with the fact that they implemented operations and task force committees after the fact, if they had done it before the exhibition even opened, they probably would have completely avoided a lot of these issues. Having a representative from every department enhances communication and understanding. To have an exhibition committee before the exhibit opened and before these issues arose would have prepared them better because they would have had teamwork. They would have been able to set tasks for each department to ensure that they had the space and the facilities required, that they had the staff needed, or that they needed to add additional staff to ensure that the operations and the functions and the goals that they sought to achieve were realized. And it seems like instead of putting together a committee before, they waited until after when the problems had already struck. So this would have been much better for them to utilize in the beginning. And this all brings me to the staffing plan. The staffing plan is a document that should be reviewed and revised just like the exhibition plan, just like a budget plan. It is an iterative document that reflects the change of the museum itself. And in this case, it should have been changed or revised to reflect the responsibilities of the new visitor services department. If they had changed the initial policies and procedures as stated before, they would have changed the staffing plan as well. But it also would have changed to reflect everything else discussed, the exhibition planning, the attendance projections, the committees and task forces. If additional staffing was needed or additional communication was needed between staffs, this should have been reflected in the staffing plan, and the departments within the people within the departments and the departments themselves would have better understood this. And that's why I have wheel organizational chart as an example, because that I think that would have been the preferred chart. There is no clear explanation of what their staffing plan was, but had they utilized a wheel organizational chart with the mission centered at the middle, they would have better been encouraged to communicate with each other and work together as a team and provide these committees that would have gotten them where they needed to go and brought about the goals that they sought to achieve, which in a sense was staff experience and visitor experience. So that concludes my final presentation. Thank you for watching.